Hi, I'm Allison, and welcome to Adoption Collection. I'm here today with Joy. So, would you like to explain a little bit about your adoption story?
Sure. I was running a short film festival. I met a guy who was a novelist and a screenwriter, and um, went over to his house, had a one night stand. He was very verbally abusive during the pregnancy, and I just decided I didn't want to have to deal with him for 18 years of my life. I wanted my son to have a stable home life and have the type of upbringing that I had. So I chose to research adoption. I'd had a best friend at the time who had also done adoption, so I had firsthand knowledge of it. And then I also sought counseling and ended up living at a maternity home with women who ended up keeping their children, and I saw what a difficult life that was. My sister is a single parent, and I just thought, I don't want to put my son through that. He's half Nigerian and half me, and I also felt that because he's mixed, he needed a strong male role model. And so the couple that I chose, the father's African American and the mother's white like me, blonde, and I waited until a month before he was born to actually find the couple. And I went through adoption agencies, scoured the country, wrote all my friends, and said, "Do you guys know anybody?" And the most heartbreaking experience was contacting an adoption attorney, and I told him what my top 10 criteria was, because that's what the therapist had said to do. And he goes, "Oh, you're never going to find that." And it was devastating. And then I contacted another attorney, and he goes, "If God wants this child to have a family, he will." And I narrowed it down to the top three criteria, and that attorney helped me find the right couple. And so a month before he was born, I interviewed them over the phone, had all these questions and everything. And during the pregnancy, it was a very difficult pregnancy. I almost lost him at 5 months because I had a fibroid die on my appendix, and so it was a real delicate situation. And I can remember sitting in the hospital with my mom and saying, "I know I'm not keeping him, but I don't want him to die."
Right.
And the surgery was successful, and he was born 2 weeks late, I think. And so the couple and I got to know each other before I actually placed him. And then he was colicky for 4 months after the birth. And I think that was the hardest part, because when you first give birth to a child, you're very protective. And I had no idea the feelings that I would have, and I just sobbed the entire night. And then I had to have a blood transfusion, so I had to stay in the hospital longer than him. And it was very difficult. And the first couple months afterward, I had postpartum really severely and was suicidal and just really not in a good place. And then I got on the right meds, got the right counseling, and I would say about 4 years entirely for me to come to grips with it. And during that time, I did a lot of activism for adoption. I did a lot of speaking, a lot of petitioning the government for more money for adoption, and just did a lot of activism. And then I just came to the point in my life after 4 years where I realized being a birth mother doesn't define me as a woman. It's a part of my life, it's not my whole life. So um, it's a process. And I went through with what other people do. It's like, "Oh, do you have a child? Do you say yes or do you say no?"
Right.
And if you're on a dating site, they say, "Do you have kids?" And I say no, because technically it's none of their business until they know me more to know haven't raised my son. But he's still very much my son, and we have an open adoption. That hasn't always been the easiest thing, but I'm grateful for the parents and the relationship we have today, and also the fact that my son has always known that I loved him, and he's always known that I'm there for him and that I did this out of love, and that I wanted him to have a better life than I knew that I could give him.
That's great. So, I know you said that you had talked with the adoptive parents before. Did you ever meet them in person, or did they come to the hospital? How did that work?
Well, they were based at the time in New Mexico, and they had kind of given up having a child. And a couple sitting behind them in church said, "Hey, I just heard about this baby that needs adoption. Are you interested?" So they had less than a month to prepare, and they went through all the house, the review and everything. And then when they did come out, his birth was delayed, so I had
Right.
2 weeks to get to know him.
Oh, okay.
But I had made I'm a journalist, so I made like 100 questions. And as I processed it, I just felt more and more that they would do a good job, and they were a good fit. And he fits well because the father's black, the mother's white, and he's mixed. So nobody has ever really questioned it.
Right. That's great. And then when you when you got out of the hospital because you had all of your complications, how did that work for you? Because I know you're in pain, but then at the same time you're going through all of this mental of like placing your child and not having him there. Did you have postpartum depression or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
majorly. But what was cool in the hospital is we did the chaplain came, because I'd done a lot of research, and the attorney that I had was Christian, and he had an adoption ceremony. So we did the adoption ceremony in the hospital with the chaplain and basically dedicated him to that family. And also it just helped because once I recovered, I had made plans to go live in New York for a little bit. And so I had goals of my own. It wasn't just have the baby. It was like have the baby but have a life after. And then the other cool thing that another group had recommended is we had an adoption party. So I did have a baby shower, but it was basically for me so that I had cards and gifts after the birth to look at and to be comforted by and encouraged by. So yes, postpartum was really hard. And when I was living in New York and I'd see little children, I would cry because I didn't have the support system. I don't know as I would have done that again, but at the point I had been pregnant and just felt so alone and just so ostracized and like I lost my life. I really just wanted to get the hell out of California and start new, but I don't know as I would have done it again. I think you need the support of people that know what you've been through and who you are and can encourage and support you.
Right. I think having, not your baby shower, but having your adoption shower is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it was
I wouldn't have
helpful.
even thought of that because I know I didn't have one.
Yeah.
To me, I just didn't tell most of my friends that I was pregnant.
Yeah. No, I sent out announcements to everybody. When I was living at the maternity home, it's a nonprofit, so I took the newsletter and I put a sticky on it and I said, I'm pregnant, I'm living here, and if you want to support them, here's their info, because I'm a publicist too. So I just I lost friends because they didn't understand why I was doing the adoption. And one of my friends was like, how could you be so stupid? And it's like, yeah, how could I? But it is what it is. And I feel that as going through therapy and just having the opportunity to process, the pros and the cons, and am I ready to be a parent? Was I ready for this responsibility? I think it made it a lot easier in the long run because I've always been, I remember too, I was living in New York and this girl goes, so when do you get him back? And I'm like, it's not like that. An open adoption means I have a relationship, but I'm never taking him back.
Yeah.
And I think some people don't understand what open adoption really means. So.
Yeah, I've noticed that too in my case where people are like, oh, but does he live with you like on the weekends?
I know.
And it's like, no. Like I see him, but he has his family.
Yeah.
And then I'm here with Kendall, so it's just.
It feels more like an aunt.
Right. That's what I try and explain to people. I was like, I'm like the fun aunt that comes for your birthday party.
Yeah.
Like, I still call him my son. He still is my son.
Yeah. Does he call you mom?
Yeah, he calls me Mommy Allison. And then his
Yeah.
mom, he just calls mom.
Yeah, he
So-
calls me mom and still kind of freaks me out.
Me
But
too, a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, I try and tell, like, I love my son more than, like, him and Kendall are amazing.
yeah,
But it is that where it's like, I get that you call me mom, but I don't feel like I'm your mom other than
Yeah,
biologically.
yeah.
And I'm not at that stage yet where I can have a conversation because he's only 8.
yeah,
And I want it to be where we're actually able to sit down one day. But
Yeah.
every time he calls me Mommy Allison, I'm like,
but just accept it.
I know, and I am, because I'm doing this for him. But
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I don't.
Well, my son called me mom at age 2,
Okay.
so it's just internal. They just know, and
Yeah.
I don't think that bond will ever be broken.
Yeah. I mean, like, my son knows, he'll just call me and be like, hey, so I was wondering, I'm doing this project, because the whole time with him growing up, I was like, I wonder what they're going to do, because we're not the same nationalities.
Oh,
And so I was like, I wonder if he's going to ever ask. And he did one day. He's like, I know I'm Brazilian, but what else am I? And I was like, you're asking me. And he wanted to do a project on my nationality, not on his
Oh.
adoptive parents' nationality. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought that this would happen. Like,
Yeah.
he would call me.
yeah,
And so it was nice to be able to say, like, yeah, you're German and English and, all the stuff I am, and then what his dad is too. But I was like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, he does care about us
well,
and
it's
about
the
my
origin.
heritage.
It's the
Right.
origin, and I
Mhm.
think for me, when my son he came out to visit last year, and I was shocked that he wanted to see where he'd been born, and it's like you don't even think that
Right.
that's an issue, but it's like, and I asked him, I said, do you have any other questions? Because now's our time.
Right.
And he really didn't. And I said, well, do you ever ask your adoptive parents? And he's like, no. And so I just think because I've been open and they've been open and, he knows that he can ask, that I think it's just, and he's really in touch with the birth father.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like he feels supported and like he can be who he is.
I think that's amazing,
Yeah.
especially considering, as you said, it's like a one-night stand, and then he's still able to be in contact
And
with
I
his
don't wanna
son.
be.
Right. So you're gonna get out, but at the same time, you're giving your son the option.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not like that anymore.
Just for justifying and
Yeah.
clarification.
Come a long way.
Well, that was like 20 years
Yeah.
ago. So.
And that's the thing. It's like I went to this book expo because I was trying to sell the book topic. So I go to these Christian publishers and they're looking at me like, you want to talk about your illegitimate son? And I'm like, it's part of life.
Right.
It could help a lot of people.
Exactly. I have my sins. Here they are.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
It's okay. It's something you can laugh about, which
Yeah.
I think is very nice.
Yeah. I mean, you either find the humor or you cry.
Right. Exactly. So what were your top 3 criteria when you had to narrow it down?
I wanted a couple that was biracial because I wanted him to fit.
Okay.
I wanted a Christian couple, and I wanted them to be financially secure. Those were like, I think, the top 3. And then, creative and fun and around my age.
Okay. Did you, like my family, they have an older son. Did you care if I know you said that they couldn't have kids. Was
Mhm.
that something that you looked at, or did you just look more for the parents rather
Look for
than?
the parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that, when you find the family that fits, you just kind of know.
Oh,
So-
yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I scoured everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went to multiple adoption agencies, multiple attorneys, and because I just didn't, I think subconsciously I didn't want to do it, but then as time went on and I just realized this is not going to be a good situation for him or for me, that's when it made it clearer.
And did he know growing up that he was adopted, or
Oh,
did they
yeah.
tell him at a certain age?
I don't remember, we don't ever really talk about that part,
Okay.
but he's always known that I'm a part of his life, and I always sent gifts
Mhm.
and cards and, with a presence. So,
Okay.
doesn't make it, I think that made it a little tough on the adoptive couple because they wanted to say, this is our child.
Right.
But at a certain point, you have to understand that it's a shared situation, even though it's not fully shared.
I think that's very important because as much as, you know, we give, well, place our children, to choose an open adoption means that you want to still be in their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could pick closed, but the fact that you still wanted to be there for your son and for him to be able to call you and to say hi or, you know, to talk and send him gifts, I think
Yeah.
there's such a different dynamic with adoptions.
Oh,
and to be
yeah.
able to pick the open adoption
Yeah.
is really nice because then you watch them grow up.
Well, and what was interesting too is that the adoptive attorney that dealt with the couple, her version of an open adoption was very different than what my attorney said.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did struggle initially because I wanted to be more open, and
Okay.
they were thinking, oh, we're just going to send pictures once a year. And it's like, that's not really open to
Right.
me.
So what was your idea of an open adoption?
Well, just that he could call or I could call and just, visit more or whatever. So at a certain point, you just have to continually just sacrifice and
Mhm.
just let go and allow them to have their life and you to build your own.
Okay. So how many times do you see him once a year or how does
No. I mean, it was more of a struggle when he was younger.
Mhm.
And so I kind of waited till he was 18 before I said I want to see him. And so that's why we got together last year. And that was really fun, but it's just interesting when you deal with a person that's fully formed versus a baby.
Right.
It was kind of an interesting dynamic. And he does things that he thought I would be cool with, and I'm not. So I'm not the cool aunt or I'm not the
Okay.
cool mom.
That's okay. I'm waiting for my time.
So at a certain point, you're just like, the relationship is going to be what it is.
Yeah. Do you hope that you have enough of a relationship to where, like, if he finds, you know, a significant other, that he'll come and introduce them to you, or do you think?
I find out on social media
Oh,
a lot of
okay.
times. I mean,
See, I'm still dealing with an 8-year-old, so
yeah,
I don't have that
you're
social
lucky.
media yet. But
no, I mean, I would hope that if he gets married, I'll be invited to the wedding, that kind of thing.
okay.
But I was invited to his high school reunion. I couldn't go at the time, and I didn't really want to see the birth father, so I had to really deal with those emotions. And now I'm like, whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, he's a nice guy. It's just constant in your face, like.
Right.
And it was interesting because I was talking with this one guy, and I'm like, it's all that guy's fault. He goes, Joy, you played some part in it.
You did.
So I'm like, okay.
Well,
So.
I mean, but it still is, as you say, a constant reminder. Do you
Yeah.
think that you'll ever be able to get over that? So if you are at your son's wedding, you would both be able to be cordial with each
Oh,
other?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's where we're at now. Because,
Okay.
I mean, I don't always agree with how the birth father influences my son, but at the other hand, it's like their independent relationship, and they're allowed. I don't really have any say. So I'd rather that he has a relationship and feels secure in who he is as a person
Mhm.
than me worrying about that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any other questions right now. Do you have any other comments that you would like to say?
I know that adoption kind of ebbs and flows, and an adoption counselor I dealt with when I was pregnant says that the trend is away from adoption. And I think that there are a lot of negatives to it because it's very painful. It's definitely a sacrifice, and I lost a lot of my life just through the process. But on the other hand, there's a lot of benefits, and my son is happy. He's well taken care of. I don't worry about him. I mean, I do worry about him, but
Motherly instincts.
yeah, yeah. But it's just I have a good relationship with the adoptive parents. I have a good relationship with him, at least I think. And it's the alternative of abortion to me is just not an option.
Mm.
And I feel that to have a vibrant, smart, kind, funny kid alive and doing well is fantastic. So I promote adoption in that regard, but it's not an easy choice.
Right, and it's not for everybody.
No,
But
no.
you have to make sure that you have the resources available. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And therapy.
Therapy. Lots of therapy. Yes. And then going back to the social media, did you friend him or did he friend you? Did you wait? How did that work?
Well, he doesn't really like Facebook.
Okay.
He's more on Instagram.
Okay.
I think he followed me, or I followed him. He doesn't post as much because he's busy and he's not really into it right now. But like he recently posted that he's seeing somebody, so that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just think with social media, I mean, I'm an oversharer and he's whatever, so it's like he can always see what I'm up to.
Right.
But then you always have to worry too. It's like, what kind of influence am I presenting to my son?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing certain things. So there's always that in the back of my mind too.
Well, I think all parents do that, even if it's not an adoption situation. Because I mean, I have a 9-year-old, and so it's like, okay, I'll post pictures, but then she's like, Mom, don't post those. Why? It's a cute picture. It's like, okay, well, she doesn't like it, so maybe. But
well,
so
it was sweet though when he did graduate. He posted pictures from our adoption, so the parents with me and him as a baby, and he just really honored me, so that was very special. So I do know that I have a place in his life, so it's like little moments like that when you just appreciate that they
it's like
love
the validation.
You. Yeah.
That's really thoughtful that he would think to do that.
Oh, yeah, he's a good little guy.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and I mean, especially if you not necessarily hand-picked because you were searching for your specific criteria. Well, I guess you did in a way because you wanted this specific parameters.
Yeah.
But to find a family that would raise him to appreciate you as much as he does, I think is absolutely wonderful.
Well, and I think he does it on his own too, because I'm very different than the adoptive couple, but. And what was funny is, like, the first time we had a conversation, the mom was like, well, he doesn't talk very long on the phone. We talked for like an hour, and we liked similar music, we liked similar food. He was into anime. I had done an anime film festival. I mean, it was just like really bizarre things.
Yeah.
So I don't think that bond ever really goes away.
Well, and I noticed with my son, he's not in contact with his birth father anymore, but there are times where he'll do something, and his mom's like, do you do this? And I was like, no, but his dad does.
Wow.
And it's like amazing. They have the same mannerisms.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's uncanny how much he looks like his dad right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. Or like the way that, he'll just be sitting, but like the way that he rests his hand on his face. And I was like, yeah, that's genetic right there.
Yeah.
So I think that there is some that's been instilled.
Yeah.
So I think that's really funny that, he takes after you quite a bit.
Well, I mean, and his dad too, his birth father.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that's fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, it's a very special, unique relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as yours continues to grow and develop, it'll become even more special because you have a daughter.
Right.
I don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different.
Yeah. But I think that's what makes each journey individual and special.
Oh, yeah.
Just because there are no two stories that are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I admire what you're doing. I think it's cool.
Thank you. I admire that you're willing to come and share your story for everybody.
Here goes.
Right. It's okay. I think the fact that you're able to talk to him and, have this bond is just so amazing because at 19, that's kind of that age where you're off on your own now and doing your own thing, and the fact that he's still able to make time for you is just...
Well, not as much.
Well, but...
And I asked him, I go, are you mad at me? And he's like, no, just I don't feel like talking all the time. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And my friend who has a younger son, they're about the same age. They all met. They got along really well. And she was just like, Joy, that's what boys are like. So I have to go, okay.
Yeah, I grew up with brothers, so I can attest
I
to that.
I had sisters.
Okay, I have a sister, but I have 2 brothers. So.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you have any other comments you'd like to say?
I think if you are trying to consider whether or not to pursue an adoption, There's a lot of great resources, a lot of great books. I would definitely suggest therapy, talking to someone who specializes in adoption. I did it before and after, and it made a world of difference. And it really helps you clarify what you want, the life goals for your son or your child, but as well as for yourself. And I don't regret my decision. It was very difficult and very painful, but it helped me grow stronger. And I have a beautiful man in my life who I will always have. So I encourage you to consider it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you for watching this episode of Adoption Collection. I would like to thank Ray Fassett, Nikki Byington, Gabrielle Glavinos, and Tegan Goddard. Thank you.